Hello everyone. In today's command tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at formations as well as grouping. Now, grouping basically enables users to establish a group of units that are kind of collected that will move together and usually operate in different types of formations depending on the type of unit. Now, the first group that we always see in most scenarios is when you click on an airbase, you'll notice that it's actually made up of multiple units. If you wanted to check a look at who's inside of that group, you can actually click this little arrow here and it will highlight it for you, but it will also provide it for you up here. Now, whenever you select a group, you have the ability to go ahead and use your normal movement and attack commands, and they will attack as a group based on whatever their particular doctrine and MCON and all that other good stuff is. Now, one thing I'm going to point out is when I did not select this group, you'll probably observe the fact that this becomes a single icon. But in reality, is there's multiple units here. When I click on this group, you'll notice that it appears and it shows me all the individual ones, but I cannot actually select them. You can control this behavior by going to Game Options, and of course under Map Display, you can go ahead and set what the ghosted group members is done. If you do all groups, you're going to see an awful lot of units on the map at one time. Do not show, of course, would hide the individual group members. While I'm here, by the way, I'm going to flip this over to Stylize, and you'll see why in a minute. So once we have our group selected, you're going to notice we have one main lead unit that basically everybody is linked to. Now, just because the units are linked does not mean they cannot act independently. As a matter of fact, when you're doing an airstrike with such as an element or flight or squadron or something along those lines, they will actually engage the targets normally until you give them basically a movement command, in which case they will come back together to go ahead and move in whatever situation they need to. When you have something like an airbase like this, it's not critical that we have individual selectable units because of the way it's done. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at how you actually group units. Pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I have my little squadron here of T-55 tanks kind of hanging out here in Pakistan. All I have to do is select the tanks. I can press the G key to group them. I can select all of them. I can right click and I can do group operations, group selected units. I can also, of course, select all the units, go up to map settings, I should say unit orders, go to group, and I can group them that way. Once they're in a group, if I clicked on the lead element, you can see all the individual groups that are kind of hanging out, all the individual members, I should say, that are hanging out inside of that group. So if I want to take this group apart, all I have to do is click on the main group element, press the delete key, and it deletes the entire group in one go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put these back together real quickly, and I want to show you a neat trick. If you have a numpad and you tap the 9 key, you can alternate between which mode these group members are displayed. As it is set right now, it's only going to be giving me my group lead. If I press the 9 key, I actually have the ability to select individual members inside of this group. Now, that's going to be important, and I'll show you why. Let's say I want to break off this tank element who's stuck on the other side of the river. Actually, both of these guys are stuck on the other side of the river. What I can do is I can go to that special mode, select the tanks I want, and press the D key, basically detach, to separate them from the rest of the group. Now, if I press the 9 key again, you'll notice I've actually got two separate groups here. Of course, I can take this unit and I can group them together as well. Now, if I wanted to bring them back together, I'm actually going to get them on the correct side of the river here. You can imagine the trouble that's going to cause my logistic guys. I can actually select the whole group and press the G key, and it'll actually link them back up together to that initial unit. One neat trick you can do here is you can actually delete the units out of the group by pressing D again. And then if I go back to show regular group mode, you'll actually see that, you can see that by the way down here. Whoops, I accidentally deleted the group. Let me join them back together. We go ahead and switch to 9, detach these elements, switch back to group mode. You notice that the single unit is still a group on its own. So of course, if I grabbed everybody, put them all back together, you can see that I would now have that group all snap back. That is a feature we did not have in the previous version of Command, and it's really, really, really awesome. Now that we know how to group and ungroup, let's go ahead and take a look at some neat uses of formations. So I basically have myself a little kind of surface action group. I'm going to select them all, go ahead and group them together by hitting the G key. By the way, you can name groups separate than what you name the individual units inside of the group. One of the nice features of that is if I were to go to my order of battle now, you'll notice that this is now neatly labeled to make things much simpler. That also means when I'm doing missions, I can actually select that group as the group I'm attacking with, which is really, really, really cool. So basically, now that that's been selected, you can see the default positions of everybody inside this. To access formations, you can tap F4, or if you prefer, you can press Formation Editor. Now, all formations are going to have a formation lead dictated by the unit that has the word lead next to it. In this case, it's going to be the ship, the Calabar, which is going to be in the middle. It's a destroyer. Each one of these ships is going to have its own own station that it needs to keep. Now you observe that when I click on one of these units, it kind of tells you where that particular station is located. Now stations have two different properties. First of all, they have their location, and second of all, they have what their bearing is going to be set to. You're going to notice this one has a letter R there. That simply means that if this formation moves, this station rotates relative to the lead units. So for example, if I were to grab this entire unit real quickly, order them on, let's say, a nice easterly course here. Let's give them a little bit of speed to get them rolling. And to go ahead and pause time, you'll notice all those ships will move almost radially to get into position in a formation that enables them to go ahead and move with that same bearing relative to that central unit. This is a really, really, really slick trick if you're trying to make sure that units are basically in the same bearing. Now, the other option other than a relative bearing is what they call a fixed bearing. This is a little bit different. So now if I go to this real quick, I'll pause again. I can actually tell the units to move and stay in a specific point regardless of where the lead unit is. So for example, I can grab this one. I could set it to fixed bearing. I could set this one up here. I could grab this one, set this one to fixed bearing, put it right here. I could grab this one over here. Go ahead and set that to fixed bearing as well. Grab this one down here. There's a little bit of a precision issue with formations, but that's kind of the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So now if I send him south, watch what happens. The entire formation is all going to go up there, and they're all going to line themselves up, which allows you to basically put your most important vessels or your picket vessels all in the same area and keep it all relative. So now if I aim over in this direction, you'll notice that this entire squadron of ships is basically staying there. Now if I order them north, for example, they're all going to move ahead of that main ship because they're on a fixed bearing. Now, one thing I really, really enjoy doing, for those of you guys who are a little old school, is you could do something like this, where you set this unit to be the lead. And now that he's the lead, I can go ahead and take the individual ships, I should say, and I can actually set them to do the old-fashioned line of battle way of doing things. I really wish there was a mode that would show you exactly where they are relative to each other, because it's difficult to see exactly. You have to kind of scoot through really, really quickly to kind of figure out exactly where everybody is. I think I did an okay job of that. Again, I don't think it was perfect. Okay, so now, of course, if I let these ships go, notice that the center of the group has changed. They're actually going to assume an old-school line of battle. Just like that. Now, of course, when we have a line of battle, remember that you're rotating based on whatever the lead ship is. So if I order him to come this way, watch what happens. Everybody rushes to get behind him. You don't get that nice turn where everybody turns first. We just don't get that in command. You'd have to do that manually. Oh, you can see everybody's gone ahead and assumed my new position in line. So finally, let's take a look at aircraft. Now, keep in mind formations work with ground units as well. So for example, I could go grab this little group that I had here, tap that button, and of course I could set everybody, if I wanted to set up like kind of like a little square formation around like a center unit or something like that, I could quickly do that. Let's go ahead and do that. That looks pretty good to me. Of course, if I speed up time, notice those other tanks start scooting immediately to the new bearing positions, which works really, really, really well, very, very quickly, which is super handy. What about aircraft? Yeah, what about aircraft? So I'm going to go to this airbase, tap F6, which brings up all the parasite units. I can grab groups, and I can launch them individually, or I can launch them as a group. Typically, when you launch aircraft as a group, you're going to do them groups of 4, sometimes up to 6. But look at this. You can actually launch all 12 of these airplanes simultaneously as one mega group, which is actually kind of fun because if you're doing a World War II-esque scenario with bombers, you can put them in massive cells and basically, use them to all attack a target at the same time. It's an awesome strategy if you know what you're doing. Keep in mind the mission editor that we normally use is limited to group sizes of 6. So this is kind of a fun way to kind of get around that problem if that's what you're looking to do. So anyway, I'm going to grab a group of aircraft real quick. F-86s sound pretty good to me. Get them nice and airborne, eventually. There we go. Awesome. Let's grab, I'm going to go switch back to regular group mode. Go ahead and do one of these things. I'm going to go ahead and pause real quickly and get them kind of facing north. Now, aircraft, unfortunately, at this particular version, this is build 1134.3, do not have the ability to adapt a specific formation. So if I were to go to the formation editor and pause real quick and select one of these units, you'll notice his station is over here. You'll notice his station over here is over here, but he's not able to actually keep that particular station. So for example, if I set this particular unit as the group lead and I did something like We'll go ahead and have like kind of this trailing edge over here on the side. We'll go ahead and set that one fixed bearing. We'll grab that one. We'll assume he's the teammate. Set one of these. Unfortunately, they will not adapt that formation. They'll just keep right on flying like they normally did. This is something I swear the earlier version had the ability to do so, but you, for some reason or another, you just can't do that right now. There is one cool trick you can do though. If you're an individual unit view, which is by pressing again the numpad 9 if you need to do that, you can click on a unit and you can actually set his altitude separate from everybody else in the group. So I can actually select that one, set that to that altitude, set him to max altitude, grab this one right here and set him to, let's say, medium altitude. Now, if I unpause, these aircraft will actually change altitudes even though they're still operating in the same group. You have to watch out for that because every once in a while you forget that you did it. So you're going to end up with this funky stack that's going to be hitting a target at the wrong angle. Okay, so that's about it as far as groups and formations go. I'm not going to get into any details as far as how best to employ formations. Just know that generally you're going to have picket vessels in the event of a navy, pretty much in the line of fire where the expected threat vector is, you probably heard that expression before, is going to be. Keep in mind, if you have anything like an aircraft carrier, you're going to want to probably center them in the middle of a group. However, there are times when you're going to want to split them up as well. If we ever do a gunfire video, going back to naval gunfire, I mean the 40s and 50s, we're probably going to have to explore with these formations just a little bit more, just to make sure the big ships have a little bit of screening force for those enemy torpedo carrying destroyers. All right, hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions, just throw it in the comments. Otherwise, enjoy.